Welcome. I'm Kinetic Symphony. I hunt down and report on mysterious and weird, true stories, from glitches to the paranormal. Case file number 608, written by nattikinz. Thank God it's Friday. This happened several years ago at TGI Fridays in Killeen, Texas. I was eating with my family when we saw our friend Jesse sitting at the bar across the restaurant. Jesse is easy to spot, with broad shoulders and a distinct widow's peak, and he was even wearing a green striped shirt such as he often wore. We called out to him, but he didn't hear us. Some guy he was sitting with noticed and told him we were trying to get his attention, so Jesse started walking towards us, and it was only when he came within about 10 feet of us that I realized it wasn't really him. He was almost identical, but not quite. Of course, this poor guy looked very confused to be summoned to a table full of strangers. Embarrassed, I apologized and explained that we had thought he was our friend Jesse. He was understanding, but then explained that his name was Jesse, so it had been extra confusing that we seemed to know him, but he didn't know us. It was some time later that we were eating at TGI Fridays again when I caught sight of a server and immediately smiled and raised my hand to greet her. I knew her very well. Not as a server, but as someone significant enough in my life that I'd actually hung out with her. As she seemed to look right through me, I put my hand down and figured I must be wrong. But I was so confused because the feeling I had was so strong that I knew who she was. It drove me crazy, but there was nothing I could do about it. She then turned out to be our server. She took my dad's order first, and then when she turned to me, her eyes widened and she said, "I know you. How do I know you?" I went through every possible scenario we could think of and never could figure out how our paths had crossed. And I can guarantee you, they just had not. We covered all bases, and even if we had passed each other in a store or something, it would not explain the intense familiarity we both felt. I began to joke about the mysticism of that particular TGI Fridays. After the double Jesse experience, two friends of mine, each in an unrelated event, encountered other doubles and told me about it. I'd told them we were going to start calling it Doppelganger Fridays. Of course, this all seems like pure coincidence, but it's just interesting that it keeps happening at the same place. Case notes, file number 608. I've never been to a TGI Fridays before, and I've never seen my doppelganger either. I feel so left out. Now, that Jesse encounter could be pure coincidence, though it's indeed a large and trippy coincidence nevertheless. With the same name even. The fact people keep encountering their lookalikes, though probably not actual doppelgangers because they're not exactly the same looking, makes me think there's something about the location of that specific TGI Friday that is attracting specific people to it. I think your instincts were correct, it's about the location. It almost feels like what a trickster or a particularly funny server developer would do to mess with people's minds. I know because it's something I intend to do if I ever ascend to Universal Server Developer, or at least a server mod. Come on, you guys up there? You hear me? I want in. Give me all the power. I won't abuse it. Well, not too much. Case file number 609, written by Beyond Sight, 7-11. Double lives, double deaths. Here's a little backstory so you know where I'm coming from. Years ago, I went to private school, which would have been great, but I noticed a few things that were off. I should have left well enough alone, but I didn't. Needless to say, I discovered wrongdoings and became the target. I was mentally abused, locked in rooms and bullied into silence by a so-called holy man. I have not seen this man in 20 years. 2 weeks ago, I was struck with the notion he was going to pass away. I look on social media to find he's been hospitalized. I called my mom and told her I had a feeling he's going to pass away. The following Monday, it is posted of his passing. I screenshotted the announcement and made some phone calls. I sent the picture to my brother, who asked me to remove the image because he doesn't want to see him as we were all targets of his holy hate. 3 days later, I see a post asking for everyone to pray for him again as he has been hospitalized. I read and reread the post. I go to look for the announcement of his passing from 3 days prior, and it's gone. It's no longer in my screenshots. The conversation with my brother is still present though, with the removed message tag from where I had sent the images as the only evidence that existed. He passed away last Monday, again, just like he did in the following Monday. The same image was posted again, along with all the same comments of how he was such a great man, which I read all over again. So I'm not sure if this is classified as a glitch, or if you lead double lives, you died twice. Once for the man you are, and again for the man they all thought you were. Bonus file, written by ksghostlygirl, The Early Morning Ghost. For some background, I currently work as a service writer for a local repair shop, and I've recently been the first one into the office in the mornings. Our building is older and in a downtown area of our town. It's housed several shops over the years. A few weeks ago, my boss started joking about the ghost that scared one of our techs on a closing shift by banging around. We all laughed it off as an old building being creaky, recent plumbing issues, roofing issues, and etc. Shortly after that, I started hearing the banging occasionally when I was in a shop alone opening. For some context, our office sits elevated over a storage area, and some of our bays sit lower than the office itself. It sounded like the banging was coming directly from under my desk. It was unsettling, but it wasn't happening every morning, so it was easy enough to write off. This morning, I was in the office alone again and had just arrived, so hadn't turned on any lights yet. The only lights were from outside and some of the lights we leave on in the bays. As I went into the break room to put my lunch away, the banging started. I continued through my routine, but instead of calming down as usual, the banging picked up and almost sounded like it was moving around. I finally couldn't stand it anymore, so I opened the window to the bays and leaned out to see if I could see any reason at all that would explain it. Right as I was leaning, back out of the corner of my eye, I saw my chair roll across the room. As soon as it hit the wall, the banging stopped. I was half tempted to wait for the rest of our crew outside, but managed to hold it together. I definitely don't want to be alone anymore. Case file number 610, written by VRoll95. More candy than I ever bargained for. There was an old lady that sat close to the entrance of a huge mall near my home, selling different types of candy. She seemed very poor and fragile, at least 80 years old. And then multiple times I would pass through her, my heart would always break a little. I would want to buy some candy from her to help her out, but now we live in the world of credit cards and I would never have change on me. One time I even expressed this feeling of regret to my girlfriend when we went to watch a movie in that mall. She said she felt the same, that she would picture her grandmother in a situation like that and feel sad too. Then, a couple months ago, I was going to the mall to buy some cooking utensils with my mother, who was visiting me at the time. I saw the old lady again, selling her candy, and passed by. But when we were almost at the store, I remembered that this time I had a bunch of coins and a couple dollars in my wallet, so I went back. I showed her all the money I had on me and asked how much candy it could buy. I got a Mentos and 4 pieces of bubblegum. I showed her the candy and asked if that amount was okay. Her eyes were barely open. Her voice was low and raspy, but she smiled a little and said something like, "Yes, son, don't worry. God bless." I went back to join my mom, feeling a little better. Now, ever since I'm little, I have loved candy. My grandma would buy boxes of this stuff, and she would have to hide it so I wouldn't eat it all in a day, especially gum. I go through them really fast. So in about 10 minutes I was done with all the 4 pieces of bubblegum and reached to my pocket to start eating the Mentos. But when I took my hand out of the pocket, there were 4 additional pieces of bubblegum on my hand, on top of the box of Mentos. We were walking through the store and I stopped in my tracks. I explained what had happened to my mom, but she just laughed and dismissed me. I distinctly remember counting all the candy to make sure I wouldn't take any more than my money's worth, and even showing it to the old lady. It is very minor, especially compared to the other stories in the sub, but it made me feel nice. I think about it a lot still, and it makes me feel a little curious and good. I never saw the old lady sitting there ever again. What does this mean?